day, students. Welcome to Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. My name is Daniel Aruwarade. I'll be teaching you literature, and today we want to look at another very interesting poem, an African poem titled Radar of the Treasure Trove by Lade Wasono.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.
What are the objectives of this lesson? At the end of this lesson, you will explain the poem, determine the themes of this poem, and explain the poetic devices that have been used in this poem. All right, let's go ahead. The poem itself is a metaphoric representation of rage as a destroyer of one's life. The poet used a very powerful image of a robber or a thief who breaks into a house and tries to carry or smuggle a box of treasures, takes it away and run away. I'm sure you are familiar with situations like that where thieves and robbers breaks into a particular apartment and then collect jewelries and all manner of expensive items and runs off. It's a common occurrence in our communities and our society. And Lade Wasono has tried to paint what happens to our life in the light of these awkward incidents. A raider, someone who comes to raid a thief. What does he raid? A treasure trove, a box of a lot of good, costly items. So the raider here, I need to announce to you early, is rage, or what you can call anger, as you know. So the poet is saying that anger is a thief. The poet is saying that anger is like an armed robber. It comes into the house of a person's life and breaks the treasure. What are the treasures? The treasures are your dreams, your hopes. And so in the first stanza of the poem, it says, what is worth your life? What's dearer than the gems of your dreams? The reason you are here. Always strive to fly the flags of joy wherever you go. Now, it starts with a rhetorical question, and it says, what is dearer than your life? What is dearer than the gems of your dreams? There's a metaphor there. Your dreams, or the dreams of a man, is now being compared to gems, costly pearls, like your jewelries, your golden wristwatch, your diamonds, and the likes. Those are precious jewels. So invariably, he is saying that your dream, your hope are very precious to you, and nothing is worth it. Nothing is worth more than your life. And he says, you should try to fly flags of joy. Fly flags of joy. This is another symbol. A flying flag expresses a mood of excitement, happiness, celebration. And it's saying that anywhere you go, you must try to make sure that the reason you are here, which is to fly flags of joy, to be happy always, must be achieved. But unfortunately, there is something that comes as an enemy to attack this joy, to attack this purpose, to attack these dreams and these hopes. And the poet says, of all the things that breaches our sails, as you can see in your poem, which I'm sure you have a copy with you and you're following right now. It says, of the things that breach your sails, it says, one thing is the chiefest: rage. It says, rage is chief. And then it goes ahead to outline all the things that rage does. The things that rage can do to destroy the life of a man. But before we go there, let's look at major themes. Just like we have said earlier, we have the theme of dreams and hope. Every man on earth has a dream, has hope. For some of you students, your dream is to become a lawyer. Your hope is that one day you change Nigeria and make it a very peaceful and great nation that it is. And then we also have another theme of happiness as the purpose of man's existence. At different points in the poem, the poet tries to establish that the main reason for a man's living upon the face of the earth is to live a happy life, to ensure that wherever he goes, everyone is happy, including himself. Another interesting theme is the destructive nature of rage. Some of us are aware that anger always thrives in an atmosphere of sadness, pain, and disappointment. But the truth is that the effects of anger are usually terrible and bad. And so one of the things that the poet's persona or the poet wants us to learn is that rage has a very destructive capacity. The next that we have here is human perception as a major cause of rage. The human perception as a major cause of rage. Let's go ahead to look at them. The poetic devices. Now, it is important that we link the poetic devices to some of the themes. And so, while I talk about the poetic devices, I'll shed more light on some of the themes that we have discussed, that I've mentioned or outlined earlier. The first one we have here is metaphor. In previous lessons on the Eko Learners Support, you would have come across a teaching on figures of speech. And by now, you should know what metaphor is: a direct representation of things that might not be necessarily related. The poem's title, Rage, is a thief of laughter, sweetness, and joy. These are two examples of metaphors in the poem. The poem title says, Raider of the Treasure's Trove. Like I've established earlier, the raider is just a metaphor for rage itself. Now, we also have rage is a thief. Just like I've established earlier, later on in the poem, the poet expressly, making the language very simple and straightforward, expressly said, rage is thief, in lines 13 and 14. And here he explains what rage steals actually. Rage steals our laughter, rage steals our sweetness, and rage steals the human joy. Now let's go on to the next poetic device we have here, personification. You would have established from previous lessons that personification is the act or an expression that gives human attributes to things that are not living. Look at this. Rage is made to behave like human beings on several occasions in the poem. Stanza 3 and 4 tells us all that rage does. It's a non-living thing. It's a non-living entity. But like living things, it breaches our sails. It spread toxic fumes on every scene. That's one of the things that rage does. What does this mean? When things are going well, when things appear very beautiful and calm, rage comes. And when rage comes there, the poet persona says it spreads toxic fume, which means it destroys that beautiful atmosphere and make everyone angry and sad. He also says that rage drags rags after you. This could mean that rage brings shame at the end, brings poverty. Things that have taken so much time to be built can be destroyed all at once just because of a moment of anger. Rage breaches one's sails. To sail is an imagery there of someone in a ship, probably the captain of the ship, driving and moving the ship safely across the sea. But when rage comes, what does it do? It breaks down and destroys, capsizes the ship, destroys things, and then your destination is destroyed also. One's destiny cannot be fulfilled when rage is allowed or permitted. The poet goes ahead to use a lot of rhetorical questions. Lines 1, 2, 3, like I mentioned earlier, points at what should be our reaction and how we should hallow our dreams and our lives. And the poet is not necessarily asking a question when he says, what is dearer than the gems of your dreams? What is worth your life? Well, you know that rhetorical questions are not necessarily answered because the answers are already implied. The poet persona is only implying that we should not allow any other thing to be dearer than the gems of our dreams, than our life, than our hopes. Okay? Now, there's a moral lesson in this poem. The poet is saying that we must understand that humans are different in behavior. People come from different backgrounds. People can be in different moods at any point in time. And so we must learn to see things differently so as to exist peacefully and coexist peacefully with other people. So the poet says that the reason for rage many times is our perception of storms. Our perception of storms. Thank you. All right. Now, the poet says that the reason for rage, the reason we get angry often, is because of the way we perceive things, the way we see things, the way we accept or accommodate things, or the way we throw them off. So he says that the reason for rage is our perception of storms. How do you react when things happen around you? And he says that we must watch our minds. So he says, watch your mind. An aphorism there to let us know that our mind is the seat of every action that we exhibit. So we must be careful what goes on in our minds. We must change our perception of life and our reactions, our attitude to lives when things do not go the way we want it to. All right. Now, there's a crucial question that was asked by the poet. He says, when rage sets sail, can ruin lag behind? When rage sets the sail, when rage is the one in charge of your ship or the vehicle, can ruin lag behind? Ruin is always possible. Destruction, ruin is always possible when rage is the driver of our lives. So we must be careful. We must watch our minds. The poet's conclusion is that we must watch our minds to avoid getting angry. And just like him, whose destination is heaven on earth, we must try to seek and promote happiness wherever we go. That's the conclusion of the poet. So by this it says that his own destination is heaven on earth. His own destination is heaven on earth. That looks like an hyperbole or even a paradox. It looks impossible. It's absurd. But what he's saying is that heaven is a beautiful place full of peace and happiness. And so we must learn to create our own heaven here on earth by flying flags of joy, by casting roses. Of course, we know that rose symbolizes goodness, love, and peace, and even joy. So we must learn to fling roses or fly flags of joy anywhere we go. All right. Having discussed this poem, let's look at the question here. How is rage personified in the poem? How is rage personified in the poem? This is a WAEC question, and it's important for you to follow the order of answering theory questions. Now, the first thing to do is to tell us about the poem and identify major themes relating to the question. Don't forget that your first paragraph is not to immediately begin to answer the question, but to give us an introduction into what the poem or what the question is all about. And then in doing this, you must have mentioned and explained briefly some of the major or central themes of the question. And then you move on to outline what is personification. What does it even mean to personify something? You explain. You tell us what personification means. In that same paragraph, you could now decide to pick an example of how rage is personified before going to the next paragraph. Because if you try to define personification, you might not have a full paragraph, probably just one line or two. So you can immediately go down to outlining some of the ways rage has been personified. Now, of course, you know that first, rage is a reader. Acting like a human being, even when it is not human. Another thing is that rage is a thief. Another thing is that rage is an enemy of equanimity. That equanimity here means quietness, peace, and calm. Another way rage has been personified is that rage is like a human being that drags things, drags rags after you. There are others, but I want to stop here. Now, it is good that you pick each of them and explain very well in each paragraph. After this, you come up with a conclusion telling us what the poet advises. Thank you very much for listening. If you have questions and comments, please reach us on our social media handles displayed on the screen. Thank you.
Acing your WAEC and NECO examinations has been made easy by the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education with the Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO Candidates television program. Join seasoned teachers as they take you through these core subjects, targeting the exact syllabus of WAEC and NECO. Watch Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates through these social media platforms to access more educational content and give their feedback. Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. Pass your examinations with flying colors.